Hi everyone, it's Lockhart QT today, and I've got a brand new video regarding Starfield and my overall feelings on it, and why I'm particularly, if I'm being honest, not really enjoying the game. So let's get straight into it.
Lockhart QT.
So with Bethesda, this was essentially their magnum opus. Starfield was meant to be the cream of the crop, everything that the studio and the developers had learnt from both the Elder Scrolls series as well as Fallout. However, for me, I feel like it misses the mark in quite a considerable amount of areas. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was one step forward, two step backward. So what I mean by this is Bethesda is very much stuck in the past here. Again, you can see it from things like character interaction, general overall graphics and art style and how systems work, and it's almost as if this game was made about 10, 15, almost 20 years ago. Some of the elements here that are on display, obviously, graphics and systems have come a long way since, but in terms of the clunky menus, the mini-map, which I'll get onto in a minute, as well as the general weight and stamina system and the inventory system, which I'm not a fan of at all. My biggest complaint with Starfield, other than, again, the mini-maps, I'll get on that in a second, are the actual stamina and inventory and the weight systems. So this is something that was in both Skyrim and Fallout, but for me, it's just a very weird system. I don't like it. I don't like a system where, don't get me wrong, it makes more sense in Fallout because of the, scarcity of resources. But in a game like Starfield, I don't really think it belongs. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think having a game like a Bethesda game where you can literally just run anywhere and do anything and collect all these items, because you could effectively go into a high area, sneak in and just steal everything and sell it, and that would be, the end of the game. So I do understand there has to be some sort of cap, but for me, having to walk, if you carry too many items and you don't upgrade your skill tree early on in the game, sort of having to walk really slowly. By the way, you walk incredibly slowly without sprinting in this game, so walking slowly everywhere just because you've got one item too many and you can't get rid of it because it's like a gun you actually want or a weapon you actually want or a health resource, for example, and I just hate the system overall. My biggest complaint for me is the fact that we have no mini-maps and no bigger area maps, which make exploration an absolute chore in my opinion, in a game where exploration is literally the main selling point. I'm not one of those people that likes to follow essentially lines and dots and go, I've got to go here next, I've got to go here next. But in Starfield, there's just no indication of where you're going half the time. For example, when I first entered New Atlantis, I didn't have a clue where I was going in terms of where health vendors were, where accessory vendors, where different types of vendors were, because I had no idea. I had to explore myself. And don't get me wrong, there's a sort of element to that that's really great. You're exploring it on your own, and it's like, oh wow, I found this cool thing, and the game didn't help me at all. I feel really surprised, really great. But at the same time, I just don't like it. Maybe it's just me, and I've grown accustomed to having mini maps and things in my games, but even Fallout and Skyrim have maps. This game doesn't even have an overall map. It has a star map where you can see the planet and you can choose where to land, but that's about it. You don't have a sort of more detailed, smaller map, which in my opinion is detrimental to the game in its very core, essentially. I think it's also, to me, I'm a big story fan. That's why I love games like Mass Effect, for example, and for me there isn't really one here. I mean, the early sort of story that I haven't finished yet is you're collecting all the alien relics, and it's sort of like Mass Effect where you eventually find an alien relic and then it gives you a vision, and then you're trying to find out what's going on with this vision. And early on in the game it just feels like you're just collecting MacGuffins over and over and over again, and it's just really boring, I've got to be honest. Like the atmosphere and everything of the story, the actual writing, it's just not really pulling me in at all. It's just sort of like, oh, you're part of a constellation now, go and do these things, and it's like, okay, you literally just plucked from your mining job and you said, oh, because you touched the relic, you've got to come with us now. And it's just not engaging enough. And lastly, I just wanted to talk about the actual open world. I'm going to put that in sort of asterisks for you, because for me, this isn't an open world. It's not, I would argue and say it's semi-open world, sort of. It's a weird one. It's basically semi-open world, but like you're basically just loading into different instances. For example, you can't just go to a planet and pick wherever you want to go. You have to go to designated drop points where you actually load into the map, which is fine, I understand, but then at the same time, that again, there isn't a massive map where you can go and view lots of things to do and you go, oh, okay, I'm going to explore over here and explore over here and explore over here. Again, it's just very much, half the time you don't even know where you're going on a planet unless you've got a quest icon or a big landmark to guide your way. Any other means, I've got to be honest, it's easy to get lost, which is terrible game design in my opinion. And overall, the game just isn't as sci-fi as I wanted it to be, I think, but the actual open world is just lots of, you go to this planet, select it from a menu, go into another menu and select where specifically you want to go, then you have to wait for load screens to get into the planet, then you get to the planet, then you've got to go to another area, you click on a door, you have a load screen, or you get on a tram or a train or something, then you get on like a metro system and you have a loading screen there. And some of the loading screens are actually quite long for next gen, especially on Xbox Series X. Again, I feel like if this game was on PS5, it would be a bit quicker in terms of load times. The general, if you're going in and out of buildings, isn't too bad. It's when you're going into sort of the bigger instances, it takes a while to load. And yeah, it's just adding that, and obviously you've got the typical Bethesda open world glitches, which are quite funny. I've had a couple so far with like enemies completely glitching all over the place, and then I've had one where a quest item didn't actually load in to the area it was meant to, meaning that I had to come out of the game completely, go back into it, and luckily my autosave picked it up just before I got into that instance, so I just went back in and got that item again. And I've got to be honest, I haven't even put 25 hours into the game, and I don't really fancy coming back to it. I will probably come back to Starfield at some point, but it won't be anytime soon, sadly. Anyway, everyone, that's my thoughts on Starfield. Don't get me wrong, if any of you actually enjoy the game, that's fully up to you. Your opinion is your own, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. If you love Starfield and you think it's Game of the Year, that's fantastic, all the best to you. But for me personally, I just didn't enjoy the game. Anyway guys, for more sort of sci-fi RPG games, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. I cover games like Mass Effect, Final Fantasy, Elder Scrolls when that that eventually comes out, probably the next console generation, but Dragon Age as well, and I'm actually getting into Baldur's Gate as well. I'm very excited to play that. So yeah, just tell me in the comments below, what did you think of Starfield, and do you agree with any things I said in this video? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.